Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We begin, of course, by acknowledging that we are on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people, the traditional owners of this country, and we acknowledge their elders, past and present. Can I also take the opportunity to acknowledge the Deputy Premier and Treasurer, the Honourable Rita Safiotti, and Acting Under Treasurer Michael Court. And good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. Today, we're handing down our first budget since the 2025 state election, just a little over 100 days ago. And while it's our first budget in this term of office, it's the 9th budget for the WA Labor government. And the budget tragics here today, you'll notice some broadly familiar themes in this year's edition. Strong economic outlook, careful financial management, a major focus on jobs, housing, health, education and cost of living, and action on the commitments that we made to the Western Australian public at the last election. While we're proud to maintain these features with previous WA Labor budgets, what sets this year's apart from the others is the backdrop in which it's set. We are pleased that the persistent global inflationary pressures are easing. Lower interest rates are no doubt positively impacting WA households. But as a government, we are mindful of the next challenge, and that is how we respond to the current era of global uncertainty. International trade tensions, shifting policies, and war. The impacts of these global trade and investment, global growth, trade and investment challenges are real, and no jurisdiction is completely immune. Clearly, these are not the global conditions anyone would have hoped for. Therefore, a major consideration in putting together the 2025-2026 state budget was how we, as a highly trade-exposed economy, prepare for the future and the headwinds we may encounter. The good news is that we face these global challenges as the strongest economy in the country. We know this state is built on the hard work of generations of Western Australians. By keeping our economy strong, we can continue to make the investments in things that make WA a great place to live, like hospitals, services, housing, schools and affordable energy. The 2025-2026 budget is about maintaining that success through strong economic and financial management. It's also about using our economic success as a foundation from which we build our future prosperity. In an increasingly complex global market, our ongoing success will hinge on our ability to leverage our existing strengths and pursue new opportunities. In other words, diversifying our economy. This budget reflects the Made in WA vision we brought to the election and backs the state's businesses, innovators and entrepreneurs to make more things here. We are investing billions into our plan Made in WA, including infrastructure to unlock the economic growth we seek, building our trains, buses and ferries locally, attracting investment and training our workforce for the jobs of the future. We're investing an additional $1.4 billion towards making WA the healthiest state in the nation. We are investing heavily in housing across the length and breadth of our great state. And we're investing in opportunity through our schools and TAFEs. Ultimately, it's a budget that aspires to keep Western Australians healthy, productive and fulfilled, no matter where they live. WA is the engine room of the national economy. The WA Labor government takes this role seriously. We took a vision to the election to grow our role as a force within the Australian economy, to make more things here, to ensure that the next generations of Western Australians are equipped with the skills and infrastructure to embrace the opportunities ahead, to provide more homes and world-class healthcare, to become a renewable energy powerhouse, and to safely navigate the global uncertainty we currently face. This budget keeps Western Australians' ambitions on track. This budget sets the state up for the future. And finally, can I just take the opportunity to thank the Treasurer who has steered the government's ambitions of strong financial management. She and her team have worked incredibly hard for Western Australia over the last just over 100 days to bring this budget today. And so it's with great pleasure that I now introduce the WA Treasurer, the Honourable Rita Safiotti.
The geopolitical situation around the world is being turned on its head. Day to day, we're seeing dramatic changes. We have unprecedented tariff policies coming out of the United States, while the worsening conflict in the Middle East is creating significant uncertainty in global markets. This budget is about fortifying Western Australia from these global shocks. It's about investing in economic infrastructure that will set our state up for the future, and ensure that we put WA jobs front and centre for future generations. Okay, questions?
There's a lot of money going into made in WA. What's the measure of success for it?
Well, jobs growth. First of all, it's how we can translate what government purchases in particular into real jobs. And as I said, my lived experience through delivering Metronet was that working with industry, we can secure so many jobs locally if we get transparency in how government purchases, but also giving certainty, a pipeline of work. So our measure will be new jobs growth, and in particular jobs growth in manufacturing. We really believe that our manufacturing sector is already so strong, but so many opportunities. And around the world, we're seeing this by a lot of jurisdictions. It's providing more resilience to your WA, to the local economy. Also in relation to manufacturing, I would say over time, what's happened is a lot of investment in the capital equipment means that jurisdictions who before could not be competitive in manufacturing can be competitive. With the right technology, the right capital equipment, WA can be very competitive in manufacturing.
What's your message to households who are already in the one zone area that aren't going to see that $625 saving and are also going to feel the hit of losing $550 to the power grid?
Well, we're supporting households with things like, for example, the student assistance payment that didn't exist a few years ago. With our second round is currently being distributed. We're also supporting households in relation to things like our battery scheme. Now, our battery scheme is not only about rebates, but it's supporting low and middle income earners to get those batteries. There's a whole raft of initiatives. Those households may have kids that play sport, and we've got a $300 kids sport voucher. In regional WA, there's a whole range of initiatives. And the other thing I would say is in relation to cost of living. Housing affordability is a key part of that discussion. That's why our effort has been so much in investing in new supply, whether it be new infrastructure to support new housing, new incentives to get new housing off the ground, partnering with the Commonwealth on affordable rentals, converting vacant and Airbnbs. We know that housing is a major cost driver, and that's why we're investing so much in supporting new housing supply.
Housing takes time to build though. Housing costs right now are still going up. And so in the meantime, while people are struggling, is it a bit disingenuous, sneaky even, to use the Commonwealth's $150 to suggest that your household basket is going down? It's not.
Well, first of all, in relation to the increases in fees and charges, what we do is we take the representative model and we apply that, and then we measure across the years. Now, in relation to housing, I think you can see that there's already been a significant effort in increasing housing supply. The national figures show that we're leading the nation in relation to increasing housing supply. In fact, the chief economist from the MBA last week said Western Australia was the only state that was looking like achieving the national housing targets. So we are investing a record amount in helping households. We'll continue to help households, and we'll continue to increase the level of housing supply to support households in regional WA. Well, it's part of the overall package, and we pass it through. So we're very proud that the Commonwealth has put forward a $150 credit, and we're passing that through our government.
Treasurer, just on this cost of living for a minute, I think there's been 3 power credits, and I think 1 year they were frozen. I mean, this is in that kind of COVID and post-COVID. Can you just give me a bit more sort of a look at your thinking? Because obviously this year you thought West Australians don't need it. So what's changed? What's changed in 25, 26 that this year there was a decision made that West Australians don't need a power credit? I'm talking about the state one. Yeah.
Well, a couple of things in relation to that question. We are investing in cost of living relief across a number of measures. For example, the student assistance payment didn't exist 3 years ago. It's being rolled out now. It's providing hundreds of dollars of extra support. We've injected more money into kids' sport vouchers. There's a whole range of initiatives. We're making it free for for kids to catch public transport to school, which is saving families again. There's a whole range of initiatives that we're rolling out. But we need to continually monitor what's happening in the economy, and we continually support households. But we also know that households want jobs. They want good jobs to make sure that they have an economic future and their kids have an economic future. We also, as I said, continue to support new housing supply. So there's a whole range of initiatives. We continually support households, but we also have to have a mind for the future, and this is why we're focusing very much on jobs in this budget.
Question from Hamish here. Why aren't you touching kind of structural household fees and charges? It seems like a lot of the cost of living supports here are very specific streams. So you have to have a kid at school, or why not reverse or at least freeze those energy bills, water bills, car rego bills?
Well, in relation to particular... Oops, sorry. In relation to households, in particular targeting lower income households, we have increased, for example, the concessions for those in that targeted bracket. Over 330,000, for example, will have an indexed relief in relation to energy costs. So for those households who are on the lower income level or got social concessions, they have increased subsidies through the indexation of the concessions.
What considerations have been made for renters that seem they're missing out on the locals that don't really benefit from battery rebate from home buyer schemes? What considerations have been made?
Well, our biggest effort is to stop the increases in rental prices. So increasing housing supply is fundamental to renters. So we know that we've seen some increases in rental costs. So to make sure we can support renters in the future, there's two things. There's a rental relief program that supports households under rental stress, and we continue to extend that. And I think there's about $12 million that's been allocated to support those families. But in particular, it's about increasing housing supply. And what we're really wanting to see is an increase in rental vacancy, which will put which will moderate any increases in rent. So that's our focus. We have to increase housing supply to take the pressure off rent prices.
Question from Tom.
Talking about WA's exposure, trade exposure and everything to China and the diversification of the state's economy. Just wondering, do you ever see this downstream processing, the manufacturing kind of goals of WA to really ever replace our state's reliance on iron ore? Like it's $10 billion a year, or is it just a small kind of safety net for you guys?
Well, you're right. We have a very strong iron ore market, and as part of the speech that I'll outline very, very soon, this budget's about acknowledging that we have a very strong commodity market and supporting that into the future. But I think if we don't explore these opportunities to value add, to have more local manufacturing, then we will be filled with a lot of regret in 10 years' time. We have to take this opportunity. And as the Premier has outlined on so many occasions, we have an abundance of the minerals that the world needs. We've got the solar and wind capacity that the world is striving for. What we need to do is invest in the infrastructure to support the aspirations of the private sector. And that's what we're very much tailored to. That's why the SIAs are there. If you look at the Perdaman project, for example, that's a massive project. It's over $6 billion of investment. They're the types of projects that will continue to support our export resilience, but also local jobs. And we need to keep supporting those types of projects, because without that, as I said, in 10 years' time, we'll be filled with a lot of regret that we didn't take this opportunity to do our best to secure these new jobs. Look, I'm a mother of 3, and I want to make sure that they grow up and they've got jobs and opportunities in the state.
Treasurer, before the election we heard ad nauseum that you couldn't tailor and target relief based on incomes. It couldn't be targeted, so we had to do a blanket provision. Since the election, that's now changed to the fact that, and even today, that it can be a little bit more targeted. Is that just changing your language around cost of living based on the election cycle?
Oh no, I mean, look, we're rolling out student assistance payments right now. So we're rolling out hundreds of dollars to the pockets of Western Australian parents. So we continue to support, and I think we need to acknowledge that we continue to support families in Western Australia. As I said, there are a number of initiatives that I've outlined. We'll continue to work with households, but we also need to make sure we can invest into the future. And as I said, the best way to make sure Western Australia's economy and our society is resilient into the future is to grow jobs, to make sure we grow the economy, because jobs are fundamental to the Western Australians' aspirations. And I'm so very, very focused on making sure those incredible job numbers that we have, that we don't lose momentum. We can't lose momentum. We have to keep growing those jobs.
What mechanism are you going to use to target the no interest loans for batteries to low income?
There's an income threshold in relation to access to those no interest loans, and I think it's I'll get that to you later.
So you can access federal data on that?
Will be through an application process.
These results are far beyond anything that any other state's delivering at the minute. What's your advice to your fellow treasurers as to how they can try to achieve something similar to this, those who might be feeling a bit jealous from these numbers today?
I don't want to provide advice on this sort of day. Look, I think over the past 8 years we've had a very, focus on strong economic management and strong finances. That's every day, every week. Our focus is on growing the economy and making sure we have conservative assumptions in our budgets. I mean, as I said, we take this responsibility very seriously. We could blow all the money and then leave unsustainable debt for our future generations, but we're not going to do that. And so we're very much focused, as I said, on very strong financial management, but also growing the economy. Again, without the growth in the economy, your budget suffers. The public suffer, but also the budget. So having a strong economy helps support the finances, which then can help you support households. Without a strong economy, then you can't support the households and you can't drive the jobs into the future.
There's time for a few more questions. Ivan in the front here.
And the presentation is very broad, but there's no mention of arts or any Asian engagement or community culture related issues. Why is that?
Oh, we're investing actually. There's a film studio that's nearly finished out in Malaga. We've got the concert hall works where we've injected, I think, over $100 million. There's the cultural centre upgrades. We're investing in actually a film facilitation fund too, which isn't in the presentation. It's in the budget, about trying to attract content for our new film studio. We're investing in contemporary music. There's a whole range of new initiatives that very much support the culture and the art space. They're in the budget documents. Sorry, I didn't have time to highlight that at all today.
Treasurer, there's been a lot of talk previously about defence as a big growth opportunity. I didn't hear any mention of defence in your presentation. Can you give us any update on that, particularly spending at Henderson to support all the AUKUS aspirations? Yes,
so I did. Sorry, it was mentioned in the training section. So a couple of things. First of all, we're spending money to support new apprenticeships in the defence industries and targeting that through our TAFE. As I recall, off the top of my head, over $100 million for some land purchases and supporting further land development along the Western Trade Coast as well. And so there are funds in there. I can give you, one of the team will give you some specific information, but there is some dedicated funds for some land purchase and development along the Kwinana Strip.
Okay, in the front, yeah. And then we'll finish with 7.
Sure.
Why has regional WA been the focus of most of the new infrastructure spend, and how important are the regions to a made in WA future?
Well, a lot of our infrastructure spend is in regional WA. With the transmission networks, with water supply, we're really proud of our generational investment into the Goldfields pipeline. But one of the things I'd say is that we're very keen to support regional towns and getting that more housing, because we know this infrastructure is going to need more housing, and we're very keen to work with regional towns and cities. And of course, when you look at Bunbury, you look at Picton, there's been a long-held aspiration to support more manufacturing around the Bunbury region, and particularly with Kemerton and the whole area. So we're very keen to decentralise our economic investment, but also to support towns, as I will need support to getting the housing in place to support the new jobs.
Final question to Channel 7.
Part of the Made in WA section is the electric buses and ferries that will be built here. Do we have the workforce for that? Because we're struggling to get enough construction tradies.
Oh, absolutely. So we've already got a number of apprentices out at the Malaga electric bus depot. So what we've done is, working with Volgren and also Volvo, is actually employ a whole new range of apprentices as auto electricians who are helping support the delivery of these new buses. So this is a huge opportunity because the area of auto electricians in particular, there's a growing demand, and we can use the manufacturing of our buses, the manufacturing of our ferries, to have more apprentices to actually deliver these new buses and ferries.
One final question, Channel 10, quickly.
Treasurer, obviously you're proud of the surplus you've achieved. Housing is a huge issue. Are you concerned that people that have full-time jobs, they can't get rental properties, they can't buy a house? Are you concerned that they might think, well, there's not enough put towards housing?
Well, we've got a $1.4 billion boost. As I said, it's all about getting more infrastructure to support new housing estates, turning Airbnbs into long-term rentals, and we're now seeing some movements in our housing availability. We know that the job's not over, and we'll continue to work to deliver all the prerequisites we need to support more housing supply for Western Australia. We take this very seriously. You know, the delivery of housing to Western Australians is a fundamental goal of our government. I hate to use the words of the Minister for Housing, but pulling every lever, we're doing everything we can to get the housing supply increased to make sure we can give Western Australians a roof over their heads.
So thank you everybody for being here. Like all of you, we've received the budget papers only a short time ago and heard the budget address from the Treasurer, and the question really has to be asked: where is the cost of living pressure relief that was promised by Roger Cook in the lead up to the last state election? He has abandoned them. The cost of water, up. The cost of electricity, up. The cost of the emergency services levy, up. And for the first time in Western Australian history, the cost of putting your car on the road has risen above $1,000. This is a budget for the big end of town. Another massive multi-billion-dollar surplus, money put away for pet projects like the $220 million racetrack at Burswood that nobody wants, but no support for our most vulnerable. And the question has to be asked: what is the point of this continued prosperity if we can't look after everyday people? With that, I want to commend Sandra Brewer for the great work that she's done in the lead up to this budget and her commitment to holding the Treasurer and this government to account in this portfolio. Sandra Brewer.
Thank you. Excuse me. Pardon me. Okay, good afternoon. The Cook Labor government is experiencing extraordinary good economic luck. They have revenue royalties flowing through the budget coffers. They have expenses that are growing out of control, and many of the problems that were predicted are going to come home to roost. This is a government that has experienced good fortune, growing royalties, streams of iron ore revenue, and they've had all of this good fortune but failed to optimise and deliver relief for Western Australians. For a government that has been awash with revenue, it's not been due to any policy efforts but due to extraordinary economic good luck. But West Australians are failing to be part of that luck, and there's very little in this budget for them. While the Treasurer claims budget surpluses and the economic prosperity of the state, the reality is that expenditure is out of control. Last year, she said expenses would rise at 4%. They actually rose at 10.6%. This year, she's saying they'll grow at just over 4%, and I'm not quite sure that that will be the case. We're seeing continued investment in the asset infrastructure program. Massive blowouts in Metronet continue, and they're all contributing to rising construction costs and workforce shortages. There's no doubt now that the hundreds of millions of dollars in Metronet overspend is crowding out the private construction market, and this government has been a disaster for housing supply. The Cook Labor government is building around 5,000 less homes per annum than Liberal governments before it. They have absolutely failed because they continue to focus on their pet projects. The cost of housing is critical to every household budget, and it's very hard to live within your means when your rent is going up by $300 a week, to an extra $300 a week. I feel for young people in this budget. Last year, the government forecast house prices would only go up 4%, but they're going up at 18%. And I worry about what's ahead, because with the massive overblown expenditure in the asset investment program crowding out residential construction, there'll be difficult times to come for West Australians who are seeking a house. I'll leave it there for now and hand over to you if you like, Shane.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm happy to take questions later.
Yep.
Comments from Shane, and then Sandra will take questions.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks everyone for coming along today. And of course, what we've seen again today is another budget surplus which has not been produced by the Cook government, but has been produced by the hard-working people of Western Australia and the great industries that we have in this state. Along with, of course, the steadily increasing gouge in state taxation on payroll that goes with that, and on stamp duties. And what we've seen is a government that has once again failed to deliver for regional Western Australia. We're seeing in this budget further diversion of royalties regions programs, which should be there for transformation in Western Australia, being spent once again on the ordinary business of government. Things like running the Orange school bus services, things like providing the TAFE colleges, things like providing the municipal services for remote Aboriginal communities. That's the job of government. It's not transforming Western Australia, it's just keeping it going. And so what we say in the Nationals is that we call on the government to actually have a real vision for regional WA and provide for regional WA the type of hope and opportunity that occurred back in the era of the Liberal National Government of 2018 to 2017. We need to see a return to hope and a vision for regional Western Australia. What we're seeing is a narrow focus of this government on a few vanity projects and some massive expenditures in a couple of areas which are going to make it very difficult for every other industry sector in Western Australia to compete with the government in the future years. So I call upon this government to actually have the vision that it said it had for regional Western Australia, this vision that Roger Cook spoke about of having towns of 100,000 people and plus in regional WA. Where are we seeing that being put forward in any of these statements? Where are we seeing anything of growth for regional WA other than a few commitments for some dollars that we know they'll fail to deliver, just as they've failed to deliver on so many other projects which they've promised for regional WA in the past. So that's why I'll leave my comments there, because I know you'll have comments for the Shadow Treasurer, but I'm happy to take any questions for the Shadow Treasurer, but I'm sure I'll hopefully be able to answer some questions if you want as well.
Sure. Yep. Happy to take any questions.
Sandra, the government's projecting debt will hit $42-something billion in 8 years.
Is it hypocritical of Labor to have argued against that level of debt in government in opposition?
It's certainly hypocritical of this government to claim that they have tackled debt. There is no debt reduction plan in place. It's alarming now to see Western Australia's debt to be around 43 million in the out years. Obviously that'll change as revenue and expenses shift, but that's a concerning forecast. The Treasurer says she's comfortable with $40 billion of debt. I don't think West Australians should be. This has been an unprecedented era of economic good luck and good fortune. But those rivers of royalty revenue and tax revenue and receipts haven't been used to pay down debt. At a time the government could have used record tax receipts and royalties to pay down debt, they've refused to make any plan to pay down the balance, and therefore we're going to see debt levels rise to over $40 billion in this term of government.
Do you place any weight in the government's argument that spend is actually going to pave the way for the private sector to put in place the infrastructure it needs to develop the next wave of big industrial projects in WA?
Some of the investments will unlock economic growth, and indeed they reflect some of the things the opposition should have said Some of the things that are in the budget will unlock economic opportunities, and the opposition has been calling for greater investment in those for some time, particularly transmission infrastructure, improving electricity networks to make sure that prices are low and supply of power is reliable, particularly to business and in the northwest. So those investments are welcomed. The reality is, and I think industry is beginning to ask this question, is it's all very good to announce these hundreds of millions of dollars of investments, but what's the faith that the government will deliver to those budgets? Because every single time the government has said it's going to do a big infrastructure project in the billions of dollars, what West Australian taxpayers find out is that it just costs hundreds of millions of more. So I don't think we should believe the government when they set a budget for major infrastructure projects, because the WA taxpayers' experience is that it will be overspent and overrun.
We heard Basil before say that there wasn't enough on the cost of living relief here. Is there not a case, though, to start weaning the public off that? We've had inflation come down, had interest rates get cut. There's already inherent relief in those things. So is there not a case to start pulling back some of that support?
Well, there's no relief for young people who are renting, with house prices still going up. Housing supply still constrained means that will continue to be the case. And people who want to buy a home, who want to get married and settle down and have children, this just makes it harder for them. So when we look at the average representative household in the budget, the Treasurer has claimed that the reduction in fees, charges and costs will be around $50 a week. But what we've found is the budget isn't exactly telling the truth. They've cooked the books, they've changed the reference year to exclude the $400 electricity credit. So in reality, WA families are going to have to find another $380 approximately to find any relief. The other thing the government crows about when it says that they're offering cost of living relief to households is they use very specific examples where families frequently use public transport or have school-aged children. Now that's a very small segment of our community, and if you're in a country town and you don't have kids at school, there's precious little in this budget for you.